The first time they laughed at her, it echoed across the training yard like a verdict already decided, sharp, dismissive, final. Dust swirled under heavy boots, the sun burned overhead, and in the middle of it all stood a girl they had already written off as weak. No one noticed the way her hands trembled, not from fear, but from something deeper, something waiting to rise. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of proving people wrong, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this connect hearts across the world. Her name was Alara Vance. She wasn't the strongest in the unit. She wasn't the fastest. And she certainly wasn't the loudest. In a place where strength was measured in lifted weights, in scars earned, and in voices that could command silence, Alara barely seemed to exist. The training facility was relentless, built to break even the toughest recruits. The ground was always hard, the air always thick with pressure, and every day felt like a battle before the real battles even began. The others noticed her for all the wrong reasons. They noticed how she struggled to keep pace during endurance runs, how her arms shook during combat drills, how she often stayed silent when others joked loudly. They mistook her quiet for weakness, her patience for inability. And so they gave her a name, Fragile. It spread quickly, whispered at first, then spoken openly, until it became her identity in their eyes. But what they didn't see was what happened after the lights went out. When the noise faded and the barracks fell into silence, Alara would stay awake. Her muscles screamed, her body begged for rest, but she kept going. She practiced movements again and again in the shadows, slow, precise, deliberate. Not with brute force, but with control. Every motion had purpose. Every failure was studied, not feared. Because Alara wasn't trying to be stronger than them. She was trying to understand something they had never cared to learn. Balance. Timing. Stillness. There had been a time when Alara herself believed she wasn't enough. Growing up, she had been told in different ways that she was too small, too soft, too quiet. That she didn't belong in places where strength mattered. But there had also been one voice, calm, unwavering, that told her something different. A mentor who had once said that true strength wasn't about overpowering others, but about knowing exactly when to move, and when not to. That lesson stayed with her, even when everything else seemed to fall apart. Weeks passed, and the training grew harsher. Injuries became common. Tempers grew short. The recruits who had once laughed began focusing on survival, on proving themselves worthy of staying. But Alara remained on the edge of their world, present, yet unseen. Until the day everything changed. It started as a demonstration. The instructors wanted to remind everyone what real combat looked like. They brought in a team of elite Marines, experienced, disciplined, and intimidating in every sense. These weren't trainees. These were professionals who had seen real battles, who carried themselves with quiet authority. Their presence alone shifted the atmosphere. The yard fell silent in a way it never had before. The demonstration was meant to be simple. Controlled sparring. A showcase of skill, precision, and teamwork. But then, something unexpected happened. One of the instructors, known for his harsh methods, decided to make an example. He called Alara forward. There was a ripple of murmurs, some amused, some curious, most already expecting failure. The same label echoed in their minds, fragile, weak, out of place. Alara stepped forward. Anyway. Her heart was steady, but her past pressed against her thoughts. Every doubt she had ever been fed tried to rise again. Every laugh, every dismissive glance, every moment she had been overlooked, they all gathered at once, threatening to pull her under. And then, she remembered. Not the voices of others. But the silence she had practiced in. The stillness she had learned to trust. The instructor gave the command. 5 Marines stepped forward. Larger, stronger, faster. The imbalance was obvious. It wasn't a fair fight. It wasn't meant to be. It was meant to prove a point. Just not the one they expected. The first Marine moved quickly, confident in his speed. Alara didn't rush to meet him. She watched, measured, waited, and in a single, fluid motion, she shifted just enough, redirecting his momentum instead of stopping it. He stumbled, thrown off balance, hitting the ground harder than anyone anticipated. The yard went quiet. The second came with force, aiming to overpower. Alara didn't resist directly. She absorbed the motion, turned it, and let his own strength betray him. Another fall. Another shock. Now the air had changed. This wasn't luck. This wasn't weakness. The third and fourth came together, coordinated, aggressive. This time, Alara moved faster, not stronger, but sharper. Every step was precise, every movement calculated. She wasn't fighting them as individuals anymore. She was reading the space between them, using their positions against each other. Within seconds, both were down, their confidence shattered. And then there was one left. The strongest among them. He hesitated. For the first time, doubt crossed the face of someone who had never known it in training. The crowd held its breath. The sun seemed to stand still in the sky. Even the wind felt like it had paused to watch. Alara stood there, calm. Not triumphant. Not angry. Just present. When he finally moved, it wasn't with arrogance anymore. It was cautious, uncertain. But uncertainty in combat is a weakness of its own. Alara saw it instantly. And in one final, perfectly timed movement, a strike that wasn't about force but about understanding, she ended it. Silence fell like a weight across the yard. 5 Marines. One moment. One strike that wasn't just physical, but symbolic of everything she had endured. No one laughed now. No one whispered. Because the girl they had called weak had just redefined what strength looked like. But the most powerful moment wasn't the takedown. It was what came after. Alara didn't celebrate. She didn't look around for approval. She simply stepped back, breathing steadily, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Because to her, this wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about finally believing she had never been what they called her. In the days that followed, something shifted. Not just in how others saw her, but in how they saw themselves. The loudest ones grew quieter. The most confident ones became more thoughtful. Respect replaced mockery, and curiosity replaced judgment. They began to ask questions. Not about how she won, but about how she learned. And Alara, true to herself, didn't teach them with words. She showed them. Through patience. Through discipline. Through the same quiet determination they had once ignored. Because strength, she realized, wasn't something you proved once. It was something you lived, every single day. If this story moved you even a little, take a moment now to like, comment, and share it with someone who might need to hear this today. You never know whose life it might change. And before we reach the end, here's something special. Comment the word, unseen strength, if you've ever been underestimated in your life. Years later, long after that day became a story told to new recruits, Alara Vance was no longer known as the weakest in training. She became the standard, not because she was the strongest, but because she showed everyone that strength isn't always loud, isn't always visible, and isn't always understood at first. Sometimes, it's quiet, sometimes, it's patient, and sometimes, it waits for the perfect moment to change everything. And in that moment, it doesn't just defeat opponents. It rewrites destiny.